What's up, guys? UFC 269 just wrapped up and it was a fantastic card. I mean, so many finishes throughout it. The prelims were awesome, the early prelims were really good, and the main card delivered. And overall, man, it was a night for the underdogs. I think besides Sean O'Malley, every underdog won on the entire main card. And those are the kind of things that make a special night. And we're going to start with that main event. Charles Oliveira defeats Dustin Poirier by a third round submission. It was left with a little bit of controversy regarding the glove grab. I mean, it did have an impact in the second round. I don't think Dustin would even have been on the ground at all if it weren't for Oliveira grabbing the glove. So it definitely had an impact on the round, potentially impacting the entire momentum of the fight. That's an argument some people are making, but ultimately, man, Herb Dean didn't see it. I mean, it's unfortunate that Herb Dean was the ref in this one. I mean, he's not been doing too great, and he potentially costed Dustin Poirier a lot in this fight. I mean, because Oliveira was grabbing onto the glove for a long time, and it was pretty wide open. I mean, everybody was able to see it. But other than that, Charles Oliveira just showed, man, he is the top guy. He is the top dog of that lightweight division right now. When Khabib vacated the belt and Dustin fought Conor McGregor, a lot of people were disrespecting Charles Oliveira, saying that he wasn't the real champ, he wasn't the best guy in the division, Dustin was the true champ. Remember that whole thing when everybody was saying that Dustin Poirier is the uncrowned champ of the division when Oliveira had the belt? I usually don't like to root for one fighter or the other, but things like this, when a fighter like Charles Oliveira, who's so humble, who's such a nice guy, he's been through the trenches, he's been up and down, when he proves all these doubters wrong, it honestly just feels good. I feel bad for Dustin Poirier. He had a very similar role to Oliveira, except the guy always fell short when he either fought for the undisputed title or fighting at a #1 contender spot. But there has to be a better man, and Charles Oliveira tonight showed he is the better man. Dustin Poirier is still one of the best, he's still one of the greatest lightweights of all time, and hopefully this loss helps motivate him even further, because as you know about Dustin Poirier, every time he loses, he gets much better. So I'm expecting to see another version of Dustin Poirier in his next fight, whoever that's going to be against. I think it should be against Michael Chandler. Now, I don't know what you guys think about the Conor McGregor fights. I know that is going to be an option, and with the amount of money on the line, I don't see Dustin really turning that kind of thing down. I personally don't really care too much about it anymore. We saw 3 fights and Dustin won the last 2, and the third one really wasn't that competitive. I want to see Dustin fight someone like Michael Chandler. That is the fight that needs to happen. Well, Charles Oliveira is going to go and fight Justin Gaethje, who I believe is his toughest matchup. Gaethje has a takedown defense. He has a different level of striking power. He doesn't get out of position as many times as Dustin Poirier does when he's throwing his punches. It's definitely going to be an extremely difficult fight for Charles Oliveira. But if Oliveira can do what he did to Dustin Poirier, for an example, just get his back even on the feet like that, Justin Gaethje is going to be done. I mean, his submission defense, his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is multiple notches lower than Dustin Poirier's. And just like I mentioned before, Charles Oliveira does not need to get Dustin Poirier to the ground in order to submit him. All he needs is just to get him down on like one knee or something similar. And not only that, there are a few other things here. Dustin went to that straight left that seemed to be the most effective thing going for him. His shift combination was getting countered very similar to the way that Dan Hooker was countering Dustin Poirier's shift combo. Charles Oliveira was doing a very similar thing, using his jab and left hook to intercept. But what was really nice from Oliveira was the body work. The knees to the body, the front kicks to the body. He didn't go to too many leg kicks, but ultimately kept the pressure on Poirier, pushing him back for much of the fight. But all the guy just needs to do from now on is to be able to move his head. That is literally like the lone weakness this guy has, and it's a big weakness. The guy just does not move his head, and that gives any opponent of his a chance at victory. And that's definitely going to be a dicey one when he goes up against someone like Justin Gaethje, man. So can't wait to see those fights. And then we go to the co-main event, Julianna Pena with the biggest upset of all time, where she submits Amanda Nunes in the second round. I mean, what can you say here, man? Amanda Nunes' cardio was not the same in the fight for whatever reason it was. I think it has something to do with COVID, maybe the changing of weight classes constantly, but ultimately it gave a very easy path for Julianna to win this fight. She didn't wrestle that much in the fight, she didn't display her ground and pound, she didn't even need the hooks in to get in the choke. Julianna Pena is mostly a grappler, and she didn't even have to do much on the ground in order to win this fight. It was mostly in the stand-up, where she's deemed the weakest in her skill set. But all she needed was to sit behind a jab. Nunes was not moving her head. Nunes was trying to exchange with Pena, but Pena kept moving her head off the center line, winning almost every single exchange doing so. So it was a fantastic performance from Julianna Pena, man. But there has to be a rematch. If Amanda Nunes does not fix her cardio issue, she is most likely going to lose that rematch as well. If she gasses out in the second round again, I don't see her ever getting the belt again. Now, I did miss the Jeff Neal vs Santiago Ponzinibbio fight. I have to go back and watch that, but I did catch Kai Kara-France knocking out Cody Garbrandt in the very first round. This was crazy. I kind of expected something like this to happen if Cody was not to wrestle in the fight. Just like I said in my prediction video, if he's not going to wrestle, man, he's going to be in some trouble because Kai Kara-France is way too fast on finding that right hand. But he caught it at the perfect moment where Cody was throwing a naked leg kick. How many times have we seen this happen? How many times have we seen someone get knocked down for throwing a naked leg kick and the opponent lands a punch right over it? Fighters need to mask up on their strikes. It's way too dangerous in the game these days to throw out punches and kicks with no setup. And Kai Kara-France comes from City Kickboxing. He is a master at feinting. So when he saw that opening, no feint at all, he exploded into it. Hunt Cody Garbrandt down like he was a dog and was just landing the heaters on the guy, man. Like I said, Kai Kara-France punches like he has some kind of deep darkness in him, man. And one of the nastiest combinations is when Kai faked the jab and came in with a three-piece combo. Right overhand, left shovel hook, right uppercut, rocks Cody right before the final knockdown. It was a short but amazing performance by Kai Kara-France, man. Not too much was happening before the first knockdown. Cody was just throwing a lot of kicks here and there, measuring for his own right hand, but Cody needs to make some changes. The guy is 1-5 in his last 6 fights. For someone who was undefeated when he beat Dominic Cruz, he was 11-0. He has literally won 1 fight ever since that, and lost 5 of them, 4 of those by knockout. I hope we don't see this huge fall from grace for Cody Garbrandt. I hope this is not it either, because at the very least, he's fighting top contenders back to back to back to back. And at this point, they probably need to throw him someone who's lower in the rankings, because we cannot see this guy getting continuously knocked out like this. I understand Kai Kara-France was supposed to be a fun fight. Pedro Munoz, TJ Dillashaw, these were all supposed to be fun fights, but he just gets tagged in every single one of them. And when he gets knocked out, man, it's bad. Potentially what Kai Kara-France did was save the division from Cody leapfrogging everyone for a title shot. Because if you remember, Cody was supposed to get that title shot before he had COVID. Now that Kai took him out, he's most likely going to enter probably in the top 5. But it is kind of hard to put him above Brandon Royval because he did lose to him. But then again, Royval's on a 2-loss streak. The fight to put together would probably have to be Kai Kara-France versus Alex Perez. Everybody else he's already kind of fought, and I think Alexandre Pantoja should be fighting Askar Askarov for the #1 contender spot. And as for Cody Garbrandt, it depends if he's going to stay at flyweight or he's going to go back up to bantamweight. If he goes to bantamweight, I'm not mad if they put together him versus Sean O'Malley. It's a great stepping stone for O'Malley in my opinion, but if I was in Cody Garbrandt's corner, I would not want that fight. For Cody Garbrandt, probably test out another flyweight fight. They can do him versus Manel Kape, that is a dangerous fight, or they could do him versus Tim Elliott or something like that. Someone who doesn't really have that kind of knockout power. And speaking of Sean O'Malley, he made short work of Julianna Pena. TKO'd him in the first round, man. Paiva was very one-dimensional in the fight. He was just trying to counter with his right hand, reaching all the way forward with it, losing his balance when he was throwing it as well. And O'Malley was popping in with jabs the entire fight, missing a bunch of his right hands, which was most likely due to his lack of sparring before this fight. But he just needed time before he was able to get the timing and get the precision down, because Julianna Pena was not moving his head from punches. He was either walking into them, or he was moving his head into the right hand, but O'Malley was still missing it. It came about time where O'Malley was starting to measure his right hand off of his fake jab, and ultimately was starting to catch the right overhands, which led up to the finishing sequence, where O'Malley just turned into Dustin Poirier out there and just obliterated Paiva, who was a top 15 fighter. Now, it depends what route the UFC wants to go. If they want to build O'Malley quickly, as well as propel his name faster, put him up against Rafael Sunsao. But if they want to build him slower, I think he should fight Song Yadong. The reason why I wouldn't put him up against Cody Stamann is because Cody has that level of wrestling that maybe O'Malley's not ready for. But then again, as a fan, I want to see him get tested, man. I want to see what his wrestling's all about. If he can't stop Cody Stamann's takedowns, he's not going to get far in this division. So personally for me, I want to see him fight Cody Stamann. And then go to Dominic Cruz defeating Pedro Munoz by a decision. Firstly, I don't agree that the first round should have been a 10-8. It's kind of dicey because yes, Pedro dropped Cruz twice and it looked like he almost knocked him out. But for the rest of the action of that round, Munoz didn't really do much And Cruz actually had some of his own moments as well. He landed a few jabs out there, he landed a few overhands, he checked a few kicks, which was actually very impressive from Cruz, man. His style naturally doesn't allow him to check kicks, right? He's always in perpetual motion. But in order to check kicks, you usually have to plant yourself. In this fight, he wasn't moving as much as he usually does, and that gave him the ability to check the kicks. And if Munoz doesn't have kicks, it's going to be difficult for him to find his hands to land. He did catch Cruz in the first one with a jab when Cruz tried to hop shift to the right to throw the left hook, but at the same time he hopped into the jab, magnifying the damage, but he was able to recover, man. Not only recover, for the entire fight afterward, he was making Pedro miss, he was catching Pedro at a distance, using his 1-2, using his jab, some overhands here and there, but he stuck to be the longer fighter and pot shot for the most part. Pedro had an amazing takedown defense. Very surprised to see how easily he shut down Cruz's takedowns. But for the majority of the fight, Cruz is doing what he usually does to his opponents. A lot of 1-2s into fading, redirecting overhands. And his footwork was just generally getting Pedro Munoz off guard, man. Amazing performance by Dominick Cruz, beating a top 10 opponent, getting back into the swing of things. And who he should fight next is probably Rob Font. That's the fight that makes the most sense right now. Rob Font's number 5, he's coming off a loss. I think Merab should fight someone like Corey Sandhagen. And that leaves Dominick Cruz most likely as the number 7 ranked. Him versus Rob Font would be an excellent fight. And as for Pedro Munoz, I would love to see him fight Marlon Vera. And then we go to Tuivasa, bombarding Augusto Sakai in the second round. The guy let his hands go after catching with a check left hook. I mean, he ate a right straight and it didn't do anything to him, man. There was a clear difference in power between the two. And as soon as Tuivasa got aggressive, Augusto Sakai was reaching forward with his hands. He wasn't guarding, he wasn't shooting for a takedown, he wasn't attempting to clinch up. He was trying to push Tuivasa away, extending his arms forward, and you never want to do that, especially in the heavyweight division, because you're not really defending yourself, especially when you're up against the cage and the shorter fighter is in your face. And that goes down as the 3rd knockout loss in a row for Augusto Sakai. He got knocked out by Jairzinho Rosa Strike before, he got knocked out by Alistair Overeem before that. And Tai Tuivasa is on the opposite trajectory. That's his 4th knockout win in a row. I believe right now he has the 2nd longest finish streak. So he has the Augusto Sakai knockout, he has the Greg Hardy knockout, Harry Hunsucker knockout, and Stefan Struve knockout. You know what that means, man? Let's bring him back into the top 15. I would love to see Tai Tuivasa versus Walt Harris. 2 guys who go for the knockout right from the finish. That would be a fun fight, man. Bruno Silva came back and knocked out Wright after having a very shaky early first round. The fight ended very quickly, but Jordan Wright was really putting it on Bruno Silva. He has some nasty body kicks and then went up high into a cross and was landing some really good knees into the body. I'm not gonna lie, it was actually pretty impressive how he was able to put it on Bruno Silva so quickly. It was all going good until Bruno Silva started letting his hands go. Wright was trying to exchange with Bruno Silva and he got caught. Andre Mooney's making short work of Eric Anders, man. I've been telling everybody about this guy. His submission game is absolutely no joke. And not just that, he's a strong wrestler because taking down Eric Anders the way he did, going under Eric Anders' setup for his left hand, taking him to the ground with a double leg was extremely smooth. Eventually getting the back, dragging Anders back to the mat, transitioning the back take into an armbar. It was just way too much for Anders. And I do have to catch up with the rest of the fights. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed the fights. And if you did, make sure to give this video a thumbs up. If you enjoyed my content, make sure to subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next video.